Picture a palace where the walls are hung with cloth of gold and the floors are covered in rushes that hide rat dropping and spilled wine. Now fill it with 600 people who have not properly bathed since autumn. Add the smoke of 100 candles made from animal fat, the sweat of men wearing 40 pounds of velvet in overheated rooms, the sweet rot of marzipan castles left too long on banquet tables, and somewhere beneath it all, the river, the grey, cold, sewage-thick Thames, sliding past the windows like a secret nobody mentions. That's the court of Henry VIII, the most glittering place in England and one of the most dangerous. A place where a man could be given a velvet coat in the morning and lose his head by summer. A place where everything, your food, your bed, your name, your future, depends on the mood of one enormous, brilliant, terrifying young man. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists staring at the tapestries. We're living it. One day, one person. Everything he would have seen, smelled, heard, and survived. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just quietly fascinated by people who had to bow to a king who beheaded his friends. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. You are the only black man at the court of the King of England. And this morning, before the sun is fully up, you have decided to do something no sensible servant ever does. You've decided to ask the king for money, not beg. Ask, in writing, with your name on it. Your name is John Blanke. You're somewhere in your late 20s. You've never been entirely sure of the year of your birth, and nobody here has ever asked. You're a trumpeter of the king's household, one of a company of royal trumpeters, and you are paid 8 pence a day. The other trumpeters, the white ones, the ones who play beside you every day and play no better than you, some of them are paid more. You have counted it. You've counted it many times, lying awake in the dark the way a man counts an insult. 8 pence a day, and tucked inside your doublet against your ribs, folded 3 times and already soft from handling, is a petition. A single sheet of paper that asks King Henry VIII of England to double your wages. If he laughs, you lose nothing but your pride. If he is offended, if some clerk decides a black trumpeter has forgotten his place, you could lose the place itself. The wage, the livery, the bed, the bread, the only foothold you have in this entire kingdom. There is no family estate waiting for you in the countryside. There is no village where your father's name opens doors. Everything you are stands on 8 pence a day and the king's good opinion. And you are about to gamble it, but that comes later. First, you have to survive the morning. Your eyes are already open. They have been open for some time, staring into a darkness so complete you cannot see your own hand. For half a second you don't know where you are. Then the cold tells you. That particular cold, stone cold, river cold, the cold of a palace in January when you remember, Westminster, the trumpeter's lodging, England. Then the smell arrives, the way it always does, in layers. Wet wool first, from the cloaks hung dripping by the door last night. Then tallow smoke, greasy and animal, soaked permanently into the ceiling beams. Then the sour breath and unwashed bodies of 5 sleeping men in one small room. Then, underneath everything, faint but constant, the river, mud and fish and human filth, seeping through the very stones, and you, your own body, your own sweat, part of the same warm human fog. Welcome to the Palace of Westminster, in the 2nd year of the reign of King Henry VIII. It is January in the year of our Lord 1511, and in 3 days the king will hold the greatest tournament England has seen in living memory. and you will play the fanfares that open it. If, that is, you still have a position in 3 days. You are lying on a straw pallet on the floor, close enough to the next man to feel the heat of his back. His name is Peter, a trumpeter from Kent, and he snores like a bear with a head cold. He does it every night. You have learned to sleep through it the way sailors learn to sleep through storms. On his other side lies old Adam, then 2 more, all of you rolled in blankets on the floor of a chamber not much bigger than a stable stall. Because at court, a private bed is a luxury reserved for men so far above you that you will never see the inside of their rooms. You share a bed, or a floor, or a bench. That's normal. Everyone at your level does. Privacy at the court of Henry VIII is rarer than diamonds and considerably more suspicious. Somewhere outside a bell begins to strike. Then another, further off from the abbey. Deep, enormous, patient bells that have been ringing over this river since before the conquest. Bells your grandchildren's grandchildren could stand under and hear, if you ever have grandchildren, if any of this works out at all. The abbey bells don't care about your petition. They have rung for the coronations of kings and the funerals of kings, and they will still be ringing when everyone in this room is dust. 4 strokes. 5, 6, 6 o'clock. You should already be up. You push the blanket off and the cold takes you immediately, wraps around you like water. Your breath shows even here, indoors. The rushes on the floor crackle under your bare feet. Old rushes, weeks old, gone brittle and dark, hiding chicken bones and dog hairs and things you prefer not to identify. Your toes find your boots by memory. The water in the basin by the wall has a skin of ice on it. You break it with the side of your fist, a small crunch, like stepping on thin snow, and splash your face. The shock of it drives the last sleep out of you. Your fingers ache instantly. You wash quickly, roughly. Face, neck, hands, behind the ears. Because the master of the trumpeters inspects his men the way a falconer inspects his birds. And a dirty trumpeter, he says, is an insult to the king's own mouth. Then you dress, and this is a ritual, because every single thing you put on your body this morning belongs to the king. The shirt is yours, more or less. Rough linen, wash thin. But over it goes the livery, a doublet and coat in the king's colours. Good wool, better wool than your father ever touched in his life, with the badges that mark you as a servant of the royal household. When you walk through London in this coat, men step aside, not for you, for the coat. You learned that distinction in your first month, and you have never forgotten it. And then the last thing, the thing you take from the chest at the foot of the wall, unwrapped from its cloth like something holy, the trumpet. 4 feet of brass, folded once, cold as a sword blade in your hands. The weight of it is as familiar to you as the weight of your own arms. You have carried it on horseback, on barges, upstairs, through smoke, through rain, through 11-hour ceremonies where your lips split and bled and you kept playing anyway. The mouthpiece, when you touch it to your lips out of pure habit, is so cold it burns. A trumpeter's first lesson in an English winter. Never put your lips to brass that has spent the night against a stone wall. You warm the mouthpiece in your fist as you walk, the way you have done 10,000 mornings, your breath fogging, your knuckles cracked and stinging from the cold, the metal slowly, slowly taking the heat of your body. Because in 1 hour this trumpet has to announce the King of England to the world, and the man holding it has to look like he was born to do it. Peter is awake now, groaning, scratching, pulling on his own livery in the dark. He looks at you the way he looks at you every morning, half asleep, entirely without curiosity. That took time. When you first arrived, men looked at you the way they'd look at a comet. Something to be discussed, interpreted, maybe feared. Some crossed themselves. Some touched your skin when they thought you wouldn't notice, or asked, with the bluntness of men who have never had to be careful whether the colour came off. It has been years now. At court, you are no longer a wonder. Your furniture, useful, decorative, expected to be silent between fanfares. You're not sure which was worse, being a marvel or being furniture, but you know which one is safer. You've got the look again, Peter says, lacing his doublet. What look? The look of a man doing sums in his head. He yawns, jaw-cracking. Every morning this week, sums. You owe money to somebody? Nobody owes me anything, you say, and the words come out flatter and harder than you intended, and Peter, wisely, lets it go. But he's right. You're doing sums. You've been doing the same sum for 2 years. Here it is, 8 pence a day, roughly £12 a year, if every day is paid, which it is. The king's household pays reliably, one of its genuine virtues. £12 a year is not poverty. A ploughman sees £4 a year and feeds a family on it. A skilled London craftsman might see 6 or 8. £12 plus livery, plus food at the king's expense, plus a roof. By the arithmetic of England, you are doing well. But you are not a ploughman. You are a royal trumpeter, and royal trumpeters, the senior ones, the established ones, draw 16 pence a day, twice your wage. You have stood shoulder to shoulder with them on frozen scaffolds at dawn. You have played the same notes from the same sheets in the same coats. Your sound is not weaker. Your attendance is not worse. In the old king's time you were newer, junior, foreign, learning the repertoire, and 8 pence made a kind of sense. That was then. The old king is dead. You played at his funeral. You remember the black cloth, the black horses, the black-draped barge on the black river, the way the whole city seemed to hold one long grey breath. And then, weeks later, you played at the coronation of his son, and the world turned from black to gold overnight. An 18-year-old giant of a king, 6'2", gleaming, laughing, throwing money into crowds. A king who loved music the way other men love hunting, who composed songs himself, who could pick up almost any instrument in the room and play it well enough to embarrass professionals. A king like that, you reasoned, would understand what a trumpeter is worth. And so, you did the unthinkable. You found a clerk. It cost you 4 days' wages, that clerk, and you paid it without blinking. And you had a petition drawn up in the proper form, in the proper language, the ornate legal begging speech of documents addressed to Majesty, to the King, our sovereign Lord. In his most humble wise sheweth unto your highness your true and faithful servant, John Blanke, one of your trumpets. The words are humble, the request is not. The request is, pay me what the others are paid. 16 pence a day. Double. The paper sits against your ribs right now, inside your doublet, and you can feel it when you breathe. The faint stiffness of it, like a splinter you have decided to keep. Because here is the thing you understood, lying awake to the sound of Peter's snoring. Nobody is ever going to offer. There is no ladder here that raises men automatically year by year. At court, wages rise for one reason only, because someone above you decides you matter. And no one decides you matter unless you make them decide. The men who wait politely die politely, at 8 pence a day, 40 years from now. So you will not wait. today or tomorrow, or at the tournament itself, the petition goes upward, through the right hands, at the right moment, or, if God is feeling generous, into the king's own enormous ring-crusted fingers. You just have to choose the moment. And at this court, choosing the wrong moment is not an error. It is a wound, sometimes a fatal one. Downstairs, the palace is already awake, because a palace is never truly asleep. You go down the narrow stair with the trumpet under your arm, one hand on the cold wall, boots finding the worn hollows in the steps, and the noise rises to meet you like water. Understand what a royal court actually is. It is not a building. It is a small, mobile, ravenous city of several hundred people. Some say 500, some say 8. Nobody has ever successfully counted, wrapped around the body of one man. Cooks, scullions, grooms, ushers, chaplains, physicians, apothecaries, laundresses, wardrobe men, henchmen, minstrels, trumpeters, fools, falconers, huntsmen, guards, clerks, and above them the gentlemen, and above the gentlemen the lords, layer upon layer upon layer, every layer feeding on the one below and flattering the one above, and every last soul of them awake before dawn, because the king rises early, and the machine must be running before he opens his eyes. The corridor smells of wood smoke and baking bread and horse dung tracked in on boots. Servants stream past you in both directions, carrying firewood, ewers of water, armfuls of linen, a silver basin, a dead swan. Nobody apologizes for shoving. A boy of maybe 10 staggers past under a yoke of water buckets, arms shaking, face grey with effort, and nobody looks at him twice, because at court there is always someone smaller than you carrying something heavier than they can bear. You cut through the lesser hall, where the tables are being scrubbed with sand and the rushes are being turned with rakes to bury yesterday's spills, and out into the yard. The cold outside is a different animal from the cold inside. It has teeth. The sky is the colour of wet slate, just beginning to bruise pale in the east, and the yard is a chaos of torchlight and breath fog and iron-shod wheels on frozen mud. Carts are coming in from the city. Bread, ale, fish, sea coal, and every cart must be checked, counted, argued over by officers of the household with tally sticks and frozen fingers. A groom leads 2 enormous horses across the yard, their hooves ringing like hammers, steam rising off their backs as though they were cooking. And over it all, upriver past the roofs, you can see the pale bulk of Westminster Abbey, vast and grey and patient, its towers holding up the last of the night. Inside it lie the bones of kings back to the Confessor. The old king, the 7th Henry, is in there now too, in a chapel so new the stone still looks raw. A chapel he spent a fortune building because he wanted God and posterity to be absolutely clear about who he had been. You played at his funeral. You will probably play at his son's coronation anniversaries and weddings and christenings, and one day at his funeral too. Though God send that day far off, because everything you have depends on this particular king staying alive and staying pleased. You believe the Abbey will outlast every one of them. It's the only thing here you'd bet on with confidence. Blanke. The voice cracks across the yard like a whip, and your spine straightens before your mind has even processed the sound, because that is what years of service do to a body. The marshal of the trumpeters is standing by the water stairs, wrapped in a cloak, beard frosted, looking like a man who's already been angry for an hour and is only getting started. "You're late," he says. "You're not late." He says this every morning, to everyone, in the same tone, the way other men say good morrow. You learned in your first week not to argue. You learned in your first week that at court being right is worth nothing, and being agreeable is worth a career. Yes, sir, you say. Rehearsal on the leads in a quarter hour. All of you. The king wants the new fanfares perfect for the tournament, and what I heard yesterday was not perfect. It was a herd of cattle falling down a staircase. His eyes pass over your coat, your boots, your trumpet, checking, always checking. Then they stop on your face a moment longer than usual. And you, he says, quieter. Whatever it is you've been chewing on all week, swallow it or spit it out. A distracted trumpeter cracks notes, and nobody cracks a note in front of the King of England. Not this week, not any week, but especially not this week. He walks off before you can answer, boots crunching the frozen mud, and you stand there in the cold, with your heart going harder than it should, wondering, not for the first time, whether the man can smell paper through wool. The rehearsal happens on the leads, the flat lead roof of one of the palace ranges, because the marshal believes trumpets should be practised in open air, where the sound can stretch its legs, and because up there the noise disturbs no one except the gulls and God. Climbing the last ladder with a trumpet in one hand teaches you things about your own body. The rungs are reamed with frost, and each one bites your bare palm. You climb 3 points of contact at a time, slow, deliberate, because a trumpeter with a broken wrist is a beggar with a good coat. Then you're up, out onto the roof, and the wind hits you flat in the chest, straight off the river, carrying the smells of mud and tar and someone somewhere smoking herring. From up here, London and Westminster reveals itself, and no matter how many times you see it, it takes a moment of your breath. The Thames lies below, wide and grey-brown, moving with that heavy, muscular patience of big rivers, crowded even now with boats, wherries ferrying early passengers, barges of firewood, a tilt boat with some official huddled under its canopy. Downstream, a mile and more away, the city itself, a forest of church spires, smoke rising from 10,000 chimneys straight up into the cold air like the string of instruments, and the old spire of St. Paul's standing over all of it, taller than anything men have built in this kingdom. Behind you, the Abbey. Below, the palace yards, the tilt yard, the sheds where carpenters are already hammering. You can hear them, tock, 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 building the stands for the tournament. 3 days. The other trumpeters come up the ladder one by one, cursing the cold, and you form your line along the parapet. 6 men in the king's colours, brass in hand, facing the river. The marshal stands before you like a captain before soldiers, which, in every way that matters, he is. Here is something most people never think about, and I need you to understand it, because your entire life hangs on it. In this world, the trumpet is not entertainment. The trumpet is power made audible. Nobody dances to a trumpet. Nobody sings along with one. The trumpet exists to announce, to proclaim, to open. When a king enters, trumpets sound, and the sound means, stop what you are doing. The presence of majesty is upon you. When a herald reads a proclamation in the marketplace, a trumpet clears the air first, and the sound means, this is not gossip. This is the crown speaking. Armies signal with trumpets. Cities surrender to them. In the courts of Europe, the number and splendour of a prince's trumpeters is read as precisely as the number of his warships. When ambassadors come from Spain or France or the emperor, they count. Everyone counts, which means that you, John Blanke, standing on this frozen roof with cracked knuckles and a folded petition against your ribs, are not a musician the way a lute player is a musician. You are part of the machinery of majesty itself. The sound that comes out of your instrument is, in a legal, ceremonial, almost theological sense, the voice of the King of England. It's a strange thing to hold in your head at 8 pence a day. The new fanfare, the Marshal says, from the top, and if anyone splits the high note again, I will personally throw him into the river and tell the king he emigrated. You raise the trumpet. This too is a whole world of small physical facts nobody ever sees. The way you plant your feet shoulder width on the lead sheeting, because the wind will push you and your sound must not wobble. The way you wet your lips, then press them to the mouthpiece. Warm now, finally, blood warm from your fist, and feel the little ring of pressure settle into the groove that years of playing have made in the flesh of your mouth, a groove as personal as a signature. The breath you take is not a normal breath. It goes down, low, filling you from the belt upward, your ribs creaking open, the cold air burning all the way down. And then the Marshal's hand drops, and 6 trumpets tear the morning open. The sound is brutal and golden at once. It slams off the water, comes back off the abbey walls a half-second later like a second band of ghost trumpeters answering. Gulls explode off the roofs below. Down in the yard, without looking, every single person has glanced up. That is what the sound is for. That is what it does. It is impossible to ignore a trumpet. That is the whole point of a trumpet. You play the fanfare through, the rising figure, the held note, the triple-tongued cascade at the end, taka-taka-taka, your tongue working like a drummer's wrists, and the last chord hangs over the river and dies slowly, and for a moment nobody moves. Again, says the Marshal, the third man was late on the cascade. The third man is Peter. Peter mutters something about frozen lips. The king's enemies will also have frozen lips, the Marshal says pleasantly. Again. You play it again and again. 11 times 12, until your lips burn and your lungs ache and the small muscles at the corners of your mouth are trembling, until the fanfare stops being notes and becomes a single object, a thing you could produce asleep, drunk, dying. That is the standard, not good. Automatic, because in 3 days you will play this with the King of England 30 feet away, and half the nobility of the realm watching, and there is no second attempt at a first impression, not at this court, not ever. Between run-throughs, while the Marshal berates someone else, old Adam leans toward you at the parapet. Adam has been a royal trumpeter for over 20 years. His face is a map of broken veins. His lungs whistle in cold weather, and the flesh of his lips has been reshaped by the mouthpiece into something that no longer entirely closes. He sounded the trumpets for the old king in the old wars. He is the closest thing you have here to a teacher, and he dispenses wisdom the way misers dispense coins, rarely and one at a time. Tournament week, he says, looking down at the carpenters swarming the tilt yard. Best week of the reign, or the worst, depends who you are. Which is it for us? For trumpeters? He sniffs, wipes his nose on the back of a cracked hand. Both. More work than any month of the year. Playing from dawn, lips bleeding by the second day. You'll see. But he tilts his head, and his one sharp eye finds you. The king will be happy, happier than at any other time. A tournament is his heaven on earth, and a happy king boy is a generous king. Men have made their fortunes at tournaments without ever touching a lance. You keep your face still. You keep your breathing even. But the paper against your ribs seems suddenly warm. And men have been ruined at them, Adam adds, turning back to the parapet, for stepping wrong at the wrong moment. Same week, same field. So. He raises his trumpet as the marshal turns back to the line. Watch your feet, John Blanke. You raise yours. You do not answer, but you think, I am done watching my feet. I have watched my feet for years, and my feet have earned 8 pence a day. The marshal's hand drops. You play, and this time, high above the frozen river, with your lungs full of winter and your lips on fire, you put something extra into it. Not louder. The marshal would kill you for louder, but truer, cleaner. Every note struck dead centre like a coin from a mint. When the last chord fades, the marshal looks down the line, and his gaze stops on you for half a heartbeat, and he gives the smallest nod a human neck can produce. At this court, from this man, that nod is a banquet. You climb down from the roof with your hands numb, your mouth throbbing, and the day, the real day, the enormous grinding machine of a court day, still almost entirely ahead of you. Breakfast happens standing up, in the corner of a service passage, because that is where men of your rank eat when the halls are being prepared. Bread, good wheat bread, this is the king's house, no one eats rye here, a wedge of hard cheese, and ale. Always ale. Nobody drinks the water. The water comes from the river, and the river is where London empties itself, and even the dogs of Westminster have opinions about drinking it. The ale is weak, brewed for thirst rather than joy, but it is warmish and it is safe, and you drink your morning pint like every other soul in the palace, from the scullion boys to, in a more elegant form, the king himself. You eat with your back against the wall, watching the passage traffic, and the cheese fights you. It's the hard end of the wheel, and you have to work your knife into it, sawing, the rind gritty under your thumb, and when a piece finally cracks off, it's half-rind, and you eat it anyway, because you grew up in a world where wasting cheese was close to sin, and while you chew, you watch a lesson in power walk past you, because at court, the lessons never stop. A gentleman comes down the passage, young, velvet, fur at the collar, gold chain, the whole costume, and ahead of him scurries his servant, and the servant is carrying the gentleman's gloves. Just the gloves. That is the servant's entire function in this scene, to carry 2 gloves so that the gentleman's hands can be empty, because empty hands are a statement. Empty hands say, I carry nothing, I labour at nothing. Other men's hands work so that mine do not. The gentleman passes you without seeing you, not around you, through you. His eyes register the livery, catalogue you as part of the household machinery, and move on before ever reaching your face. You are to him approximately a door. You have never decided which is worse, the men who stare at your skin, or the men who have stopped seeing you at all. Then, behind the gentleman, at a careful distance, comes a man you know, Master Cornish, of the Chapel Royal, round and quick-eyed, a musician to his fingernails, a man who writes music the king actually sings. He sees you. He nods. Actually nods, a real greeting between real people, and says in passing, The fanfares this morning were clean, Blanke. Off the roof? I heard them from the garden. Clean as trumpets in a painting. And he has gone around the corner before you can do more than duck your head. And that 5-second exchange does more for the inside of your chest than the bread and the ale together. You despise how much it matters. It matters anyway. Understand the arithmetic of dignity at a place like this. You are paid in pence, yes, but the true currency of a court is notice, to be seen, named, remembered, by the right people in the right tone. That is wealth. A word from the king is a fortune. A nod from a master musician is a good week's earnings. And the small daily humiliations, the eyes that slide through you, the jokes about your skin you're expected to smile at, the way you must stand when others sit, wait while others eat, hold the note while others make the history, those are the taxes. Everyone at court pays taxes of dignity. Yours are simply higher. You have done that arithmetic too, lying in the dark. It is the other sum, the one under the first one, and it is the real reason the paper's in your doublet, because the petition is not truly about pence. 16 pence a day will not make you rich. The petition is a question, dressed in legal language, addressed to the one man in England whose answer is final. The question is, am I worth what the others are worth? And the terrifying thing, the thing that makes your hands go still around the ale mug whenever you touch the thought, is that once you ask, you cannot unask. Right now, unpaid and unequal, you can tell yourself any story you like. The moment the king answers, the story becomes fact. One way or the other, you finish the ale. You wipe your knife on your sleeve, sheath it, brush the crumbs off the king's livery, and the day takes you. Because this is tournament week, and tournament week means every ceremonial muscle of the court is being flexed at once, and the trumpeters are wanted everywhere. You spend the late morning at the water stairs playing salutes as barges arrive. And the barges keep arriving hour after hour because half the nobility of England is converging on Westminster like iron filings to a magnet. The routine at the stairs is its own small craft. You stand on the landing, two of you, boots gripping stone that the river has been licking for 400 years, green and treacherous at the lower steps. A barge appears upstream. You learn to read them at a distance. The size, the number of oars, the banner at the stern, and the usher beside you, a man with a ledger where his heart should be, mutters the identification. An earl gets the full flourish, a baron gets less, a bishop gets a different figure entirely. A rich knight, however rich, gets 2 trumpets worth of politeness, and if he wants more he can go win a war. Precedence, precedence, precedence. The whole kingdom is a staircase, every man standing on someone's head, and your trumpet is one of the instruments that reads the staircase out loud. Get it wrong, give a baron an earl's flourish, and men will talk about it at dinner. Get it wrong the other way, shortchange an earl, and men will talk to the marshal, and the marshal will talk to you, and you do not want that conversation. So you watch the water until your eyes ache with cold and glare. The wind comes off the river in long flat pushes. Your feet go from cold to painful to a kind of distant rumour. Between barges, you and the other trumpeter, it's Peter, stamp and swing your arms and breathe into your cupped hands around the mouthpieces, keeping the brass alive. Spray has frozen in a fine glaze on the lowest steps, and twice a boatman slips and saves himself with an oar and swears with genuine artistry. And the barges come, oars rising and falling in that beautiful dip and pull rhythm, blades throwing cold light, water hissing along the hulls, liveried oarsmen, canopies of tapestry work, and under the canopies, wrapped in furs, the great, faces you know from ceremonies, faces attached to names that own counties. The Duke of Buckingham's barge comes in mid-morning, and he gets everything you have, both trumpets full and long, because Buckingham is the highest-born nobleman in England and never, ever lets anyone forget it. A man so grand, so royal in his blood, that people say the king watches him the way a man watches a handsome dog that might bite. You play him up the stairs, he does not look at you. His fur alone is worth more than your decade. By the time you're relieved, past midday, your lips have the hot, bruised feel that means the day's playing has properly begun and will not stop, and your hands have to be argued into opening. You walk back through the yards, flexing your fingers one by one, feeling the joints crack, and the tilt yard swallows you. If the morning belonged to the river, the afternoon belongs to hammering. The tilt yard is being transformed, and the scale of it stops even you, and you have seen coronations. The tilt itself, the long wooden barrier down the centre taller than a man's waist, that the riders will charge along on opposite sides, has been rebuilt and painted. Around it, rising day by day, are the stands, scaffolding of fresh timber, tier upon tier, hung already in places with cloth. At one side stands the frame of something larger, a gallery for the Queen and her ladies, roofed, glazed, being lined with tapestry and cushion, so that the most important audience in the kingdom may watch men risk their necks in comfort, because that is what this whole colossal effort is for. I should tell you now, since you, John Blanke, know it the way everyone at court knows it, the way people know the weather. On the first day of January at Richmond, the Queen was delivered of a son, a living son, a prince. Henry, of course. What else would he be called? The bells of London rang for days. Bonfires in the streets, free wine at the conduits, guns from the Tower rolling their thunder down the river. Catherine, the Spanish Queen, had already lost one child, and the whole realm had held its breath, and then a boy. The succession secured, the dynasty safe, the future in a cradle at Richmond wrapped in ermine, watched every second by an army of nurses. The king is 21 years old, and he has a son, and he is by every account drunk on joy without touching wine. And this tournament, this vast, gilded, dangerous festival being hammered together outside your window, is his thank-offering, a celebration for the birth of the prince. The king himself will ride in it. Not preside, ride. Armoured on horseback with a lance, at another armoured man coming the other way at full gallop. The kingdom's entire future runs on the body of one healthy young man, and that young man's favourite recreation is the one activity most likely to kill him before 30. Nobody says this out loud. Everybody knows it. Welcome to the Tudor court. For you, the calculation is simpler and closer to the skin. Adam said it on the roof. A happy king is a generous king. In 3 days, the king will be at the absolute summit of his happiness. Young, victorious in love, father of a prince, showing off before his wife and his nobles and the ambassadors of Europe. If there is 1 week in this reign to put a petition into the stream that flows toward the throne, it is this week. If there is 1 week when a clumsy, ill-timed, presumptuous request could splash mud on the king's golden mood, it is also this week. Same field, as Adam said. Watch your feet. You stand at the edge of the tilt yard, trumpet under your arm, watching carpenters swarm the scaffolds, listening to the tock-tock-tock of mallets and the rasp of saws and a painter whistling as he lays gold leaf onto a carved rose, and you feel the paper against your ribs with every breath, and you think, 3 days to find the moment. Then someone behind you says your name, and the afternoon turns over like a card. Blanke, John Blanke. You turn. The man saying your name is a clerk. You know the type before you know the face. Ink-stained fingers, a leather satchel worn soft as old skin, the pallor of a man who lives by candlelight, and the particular self-importance of someone who is nobody himself, but writes down what the somebodies decide. This one you half recognise. A clerk of the Great Wardrobe, the department of the household that clothes the court. Cloth, liveries, costumes, banners, the whole woven surface of majesty. You're wanted, he says, and fitting. Fitting for what? For the tournament. New livery for the king's trumpeters, and... He checks a list, running a chewed fingernail down the page, and you watch that fingernail travel and feel your stomach travel with it, because lists at court decide lives. Yes, you're marked separately. Come. Marked separately. 2 words, and your mind sprints through every possibility at once, most of them bad, because that is what court does to a mind. Marked for what? By whom? You put down the thought the way you'd put down hot pan, and you follow him. The wardrobe's working rooms smell like nowhere else in the palace. Wool and dye and cedarwood, beeswax and new leather, and under it the dusty sweetness of fabric in bulk. Bolts and bolts of it on shelves to the ceiling, russet and scarlet and tawny and black, damask and satin and plain honest broadcloth. More cloth in one room than your entire home village saw in a generation. 3 tailors are working by the windows for the light, cross-legged on a table like it's the most natural thing in the world, needles flashing. A boy is brushing down doublets. An older man measures a bolt of green velvet against a notched rod, lips moving, guarding the king's inventory like scripture. They stand you on a low stool and measure you, arms out, arms down, turn. The master tailor works around you with a knotted cord, calling numbers to the clerk, and hands are quick and utterly impersonal. Shoulder to wrist, nape to waist, around the chest, pull tight, number, next. And there is something strangely restful about being, for once, simply a set of measurements. The cord bites lightly at your chest, and you are absurdly conscious of the folded petition under the doublet, 1 layer of wool away from the tailor's knuckles, and of course he neither notices nor cares, and of course your heart bangs anyway. And then the clerk says, in the flat voice of a man reading a delivery list, the thing that changes the shape of your entire week. This one plays mounted. He's down for the gown of the new pattern and the chapeau. The tailor grunts, unsurprised, and remeasures your head with the cord, crown and brow, while you stand very still and process it in pieces. Mounted. The trumpeters at the tournament will play on horseback, riding in the opening procession. You knew that. You have played mounted before. You're good at it. It is a rare and awkward skill. Controlling a horse with knees and one hand while the other holds 4 feet of brass to your face. But the chapeau, the hat of the new pattern, that you've heard about only as workshop rumour. Something being made special for the tournament. Something in green and gold. What is it? You ask the tailor, because tailors will tell you what clerks won't. The chapeau. He holds up 1 finger, crosses to a shelf and brings back a thing wrapped in linen, and unwraps it on the table with the care of a man handling a relic. It is a hat like no hat you have ever owned, a turban-like construction, cloth-wound and stitched in purple and gold, structured, deliberate, rich, not a servant's cap, not a jester's costume, something dignified and foreign and startling, a hat that says the wearer is distinctive, and is meant to be. Try it, the tailor says. You take it in both hands. It is lighter than it looks. The cloth is dense and fine under your fingertips, the stitching small as grains of rice. You settle it onto your head, and the tailor tugs it a 1/4 inch steps back and looks at you the way craftsmen look at work. No flattery in it at all, which is why what he says next lands like a coin ringing on stone. Good, he says. That reads at 100 paces. That's the point of it. You're to be seen, trumpeter. You're to be seen. Somewhere above you, in what office, at what desk, you'll never know. Someone planning this tournament thought about the king's trumpeters and thought about you specifically, the black trumpeter, and decided not to hide you, not to bury you in the middle rank of the line in a plain cap, but to dress you deliberately, distinctively, and put you on a horse at the front of the noise, where every eye in Westminster will find you. You stand on the stool in a purple and gold chapeau, and you genuinely cannot tell, for a long moment, what it is you're feeling. Because it cuts both ways, doesn't it? You are being displayed. There is no pretending otherwise. Part of what you are to this court is a marvel, a living demonstration that the King of England's magnificence reaches to the ends of the earth, that his household contains wonders. The Spanish court had its Africans. The Portuguese, God knows, have built half their fortune on that traffic. A black trumpeter in royal livery says to visiting ambassadors, "We too are a court of the world." You are, in some ledger somewhere, an ornament, and yet an ornament is maintained, an ornament is visible, and visibility. You feel the thought arrive with a small electric jolt standing on the stool. Visibility is exactly the currency you need this week. A man the king has never noticed cannot petition him. A man the king sees, knows, remembers. A man the king has watched riding at the head of his own trumpets in purple and gold. That man's paper, when it reaches the royal hand, has a face attached. They mean to make you a spectacle. Very well. You will be the best spectacle they have ever had, and you will present the bill. You take the chapeau off carefully, and your hands, you notice, are completely steady now. When do we get the new livery, you ask? Morning of the first day. Don't sweat in it. Don't eat in it. Don't die in it. It goes back to the wardrobe after. The tailor is already turning to the next job. Behind him, the clerk makes a mark on his list. A tick, a stroke of ink. One more item of the king's property accounted for. Some days you know precisely how that feels. You come out of the wardrobe into the failing afternoon light with your head still feeling the ghost weight of the hat, and old Adam is in the passage, leaning on the wall, waiting for you, which he does not do by accident. Heard, he says, the whole company's heard, mounted front rank and a hat like an emperor's. He studies you with that one sharp eye. You know what it means? It means I'm to be looked at. It means, Adam says, pushing off the wall, walking with you, his lungs whistling gently on each breath, that for 3 days you'll be closer to the king's eye than any common man in England. Now listen to me, because I sounded trumpets before you had teeth. When the king's eye is on you, boy, everything is doubled. Every note you play sounds twice as loud. The perfect ones and the cracked ones. Every step you take, twice as graceful or twice as clumsy. Men are made in that light. He stops at the turning of the passage and his voice drops into something that is not workshop banter at all. And men are unmade. So whatever it is you've been carrying inside your coat all week. Your face does something. You feel it do it. Adam watches it happen and nods slowly like a man confirming the weather. Choose your moment like you choose a note, he says. Not early, not late. Once, because you only get to blow it once. And he walks away down the passage, whistling faintly through his ruined lips, leaving you standing there with your pulse loud in your ears and the certain knowledge that the oldest man in the company has read you like a broadsheet, and that if Adam can read you, you have 3 days to make sure no one else does. Evening at the palace comes down like a lid. The light goes early in January. By 4 the sky's bruising, by 5 it's black. And the palace turns inward, lighting itself. Hundreds of candles and rushlights and torches blooming in the windows. The smell of hot tallow thickening the air, and the whole vast machine begins its supper. Supper for men of your rank happens in one of the lesser halls, at long boards, in shifts by precedence. Always by precedence. Precedence at this court reaches all the way down. Even among trumpeters there is an order of sitting, and you know your place in it to the inch. Tonight it is pottage thick with peas and bacon, and boiled beef, and bread, and more ale, and it is hot and there is plenty, and this is the thing about royal service that men outside never understand. The wage may be an insult, but the table is a miracle. You eat until you're full. You have eaten until you're full nearly every day for years. There are men your age in every village in England, in every village in every country you have ever passed through, who cannot say that about a single week of their lives. You know the sum of what you have. That was never the question. The question is the other sum. Across the board the talk is all tournament, who will run, who will fall, whether the king will be answered, because a tournament needs answerers, men willing to ride against the challengers, and the challengers this time are the king himself and 3 companions, and there is a particular art, the trumpeters agree, mouths full in riding against a king. You must ride well enough to make it sport and lose gracefully enough to keep your career, and God help the man who forgets which of those matters more. He doesn't like men to let him win, says Peter, gnawing beef. That's the thing, he can tell. He'd rather be struck square than flattered. He'd rather win square, Adam corrects, which, to be fair, he mostly does. The man can ride. Say anything else about him. The man can ride. And they lower their voices. The way men at this court always lower their voices exactly 1 sentence before the interesting sentence. And someone mentions the joust 2 years ago, when a splinter went through a helm's eye slit not 2 yards from the old marquee, and someone else mentions the French knight who died at a tournament with his king watching, and the whole table touches wood, or crosses itself with the ease of the long habit, because everyone here has seen what a lance does when the angle goes wrong. A tournament lance is made to break. That's the sport, that's the score, breaking it on the other man. But wood does not always break where it's told to, and a horse at full gallop puts the weight of a falling wall behind a splintered point, and armour is proof against most things but not everything, and nothing at all protects a man whose horse crosses its legs at 30 miles an hour. The King of England, father of a 2-week-old prince, heir-maker of the dynasty, will do this for fun, in front of everyone in 3 days. Pray for fair weather, Adam says, and firm ground. Half the deaths I've seen came from the ground, not the lance. You go up to the lodging after supper with your body aching in the specific inventory of a trumpeter's day, lips swollen and tender, the muscles around your mouth stiff as leather, a deep pull in the ribs from hours of low breathing, feet only now thawing into pins and needles, hands rough, knuckles split at 2 joints from the cold, a thin line of dried blood you scrape off with a thumbnail. You should sleep. Instead, when the others are settled and Peter's snore has found its rhythm, you do the thing you do on the nights when the thoughts are too loud. You take out the petition and read it by rushlight, though you know it by heart. The light is small and orange and jumps in the draught. You unfold the paper. It opens with a soft, dry creak, the folds going pale and furred from handling, and you hold it close to the flame and read the clerk's careful hand. The tall loops, the abbreviations, the formulas polished by 10,000 petitioners before you. To the King our sovereign Lord humbly showeth, your true and faithful servant John Blanke, one of your trumpets. And then the substance, dressed in its best clothes, that the wage he now has is not sufficient to maintain him in your grace's service, that another of the trumpets now gone from the service had 16 pence by the day, that your said servant has served both the king's father and the king's own noble grace, and asks humbly, humbly, always humbly, humility is the grammar this language is built from, that he may have the same, 16 pence by the day. The words sit there in ink, patient, permanent, and terrifying, because ink is the whole difference. Every servant in this palace grumbles about wages, in kitchens, in stables, on rooftops. Grumbling is the folk music of royal service. Grumbling is air, but this is paper. Paper with your name on it, asking the King of England, in effect, value me at the rate you value the others. Paper can be answered. Paper can be refused. Paper can be remembered. You hold it near the small flame, and there is one long moment, there is one every night, when the corner of the page and the corner of the fire consider each other. It would take 2 seconds, a curl, a flare, a smell of smoke, and tomorrow you would be safe again. A good trumpeter, well liked, badly paid, invisible in the correct ways, alive. And then you think of the thing you always think of, the memory that ends the debate every single night, and tonight, in the dark, with the river muttering below, and a kingdom asleep on top of you, you let yourself walk all the way into it. You think about how far this paper has already travelled to exist at all. Not the paper, the hand holding it. Because you were not born to this. Nobody at this court was born to their place. Even the king was a second son, meant for the church, until his brother died. But your road was longer than any of theirs, and you are the only one who knows its length. The others have guessed, of course. Court gossip has given you a dozen origins. Some say Spain, plausible. The Queen came from Spain with her household in the year 1, and there were Africans in that train, Moors and freedmen and servants, Seville being what Seville is, a port city stuffed with the whole world. Some say Portugal, some say further. The coast the Portuguese ships work, the lands south of the maps. You have let them guess. A man with a mystery is more interesting than a man with a history, and at court interesting is a form of armour. But you remember what you remember. You remember heat. Real heat. Heat as a place to live rather than a summer rumour. And then years of other men's decisions. You remember ships, the stink of bilge water and pitch, weeks of grey water, biscuit hard as roof tile that you softened in wine when there was wine and in spit when there wasn't. You remember ports where you were the interpreter of nothing and the property of circumstance and the slow, deliberate work, the most careful work of your life, of turning what you had, a quick ear, a strong chest, a gift for the trumpet that a chapel master once called God's small joke on the mighty, into a trade. A trade is a rope. Wherever you wash up, you can climb it. And you climbed it all the way to this, an island at the cold edge of the world, a river the colour of dishwater, a palace where 600 people know your name and not one of them knows your mother's. When you first walked through London in the King's livery, children ran alongside you, and grown men stopped mid-sentence, and a priest once stepped into your path and stared at your face with such naked amazement that you finally said, in your best English, "God give you good day, Father," and he flinched as if the cathedral door had spoken to him. You have played for two kings. You played the old king into his tomb and the young king onto his throne. Your sound has been part of coronations and funerals and treaties. It is woven, note by note, into the official memory of this kingdom. 8 pence a day. You fold the petition along its soft, tired creases and put it back inside the doublet you will sleep in, and you lie down on the pallet in the dark, and above the sound of Peter's snoring you make the decision final, the way a man drives a nail, not whether, only when. The bells of the abbey strike some late hour into the freezing dark. 2 days now, and it all starts again. The next morning belongs to horses. Playing a trumpet is difficult. Riding a horse is difficult. Doing both at once, in formation, in a straight line, at a ceremonial walk, while wearing a hat you are forbidden to touch, that is a small circus act, and today the whole mounted company must rehearse it until it looks like nothing at all, because the highest art of ceremony is to make the nearly impossible look inevitable. The horses come up from the mews at first light, and the yard fills with that smell you've come to love against all expectation. Horse sweat and leather and dung and hay, a warm smell, a living smell, the only warm thing in a January yard. Your horse is a grey gelding called, with the stable's usual poetry, grey. He is chosen for trumpet work because he is deaf in one ear and philosophical in the other. A horse that spooks at brass is a dead man's horse. You check him yourself, always, whatever the grooms have done. Run your hand down each leg, feeling for heat in the joints. Pick the hooves, tug the girth, then tug it again after he's let out the breath he holds to cheat you. Because Grey has been cheating girths longer than you've been in England. His winter coat is plush under your palm. He turns his head and breathes at you, huge and grassy and warm, and lips at your sleeve to check whether it has become bread since yesterday. "Nothing for you," you tell him. "We're both working for our supper this week." Mountain with the trumpet is its own drill. Instrument in the left hand with the reins, left foot in the iron, a spring, a swing, and you're up. And the world reorganizes itself the way it always does from a horse's back, everything lower and further and more manageable. The marshal rides out in front of the company like a general, which today he essentially is, and the rehearsal begins. And I want you to feel what this actually asks of a body, because from the stands it will look like men sitting on horses making noise. Your legs do the riding, all of it. Knees, thighs, the shift of weight through your seat. Because your hands are busy being a musician. The reins lie in your left hand along with the weight of the trumpet at rest. When the call comes to play, the trumpet goes up in your right. Your left keeps the horse on a contact light as thread, and from that moment your balance is a conversation between your spine and the animal's stride. The horse walks, you float above the walk. The trumpet must not bounce, because a bouncing mouthpiece against playing lips will split them like fruit. You learn to let your arm ride loose at the shoulder, a living gimbal, the bell of the trumpet steady as a lantern on a ship. Your lips find the mouthpiece by memory, no eyes needed. You breathe from the belly with your back straight and your seat deep, and when you play, The sound has to be exactly as good as the sound you make standing on solid stone, because nobody watching cares that you're doing it from the deck of a large moving animal. Up and down the great court you go, 6 horses abreast, wheeling at the ends, the marshal barking, "Halt! Fanfare! Walk on! Wheel! Halt! Fanfare!" The frost burns off as the sun climbs pale and heatless. Steam rises off the horses' quarters. Your thighs begin to declare their opinions. On the 4th wheel, Peter's bay steps sideways at a slammed door, and Peter's fanfare develops a hiccup in the middle, and the marshal says, into the ringing silence, "If that happens on the day, keep playing. If the horse bolts, keep playing. If the horse dies under you, land on your feet and keep playing. The music stops when I stop it or when you're dead, and I will inspect the body to be sure." Nobody laughs because he is not joking, and also everybody laughs because it's tournament week and the whole court is strung tight as a lute, and laughing is how the string doesn't snap. And then, mid-morning, the rehearsal stops being a rehearsal, because the king comes to see his tournament ground. You feel it before you see it. You always do. A court is a single organism, and the king is its weather. The hammering in the tilt-yard falters and dies. Voices drop. Somewhere a whole rank of men rustles into stillness, and the marshal, mid-command, turns his horse, looks once, and says quietly, in a voice with all the bark stripped out of it, "Line, now, play him in." And you wheel into line at the edge of the tilt-yard as the King of England walks out onto the frozen sand with 6 gentlemen trailing him like the tail of a comet, and the marshal's hand comes up and drops, and you play. The royal salute, full company, and the cold air takes the sound and makes it enormous. The king stops, turns toward the trumpets, and grins. You've seen him 100 times, and it has never once become ordinary. Henry VIII, in the 2nd year of his reign, is not the man the world will remember later. The vast, dangerous, bloated tyrant of the portraits is decades away, and nobody here can imagine him. This Henry is 21 and looks the way propaganda wishes kings looked. 6'2" in a country of small men, shoulders like a door, auburn hair, bright skin still faintly marked with the young man's freckles, and an energy that comes off him like heat off a brazier. He doesn't walk so much as arrive continuously at each new patch of ground. He is, and this is the thing strangers can never be told without them thinking it's flattery, physically magnificent. He rides better than his huntsmen, shoots better than his archers, dances until the musicians beg, wrestles, throws the bar, plays tennis so hard that watching it, ambassadors report home, is the best entertainment in England. And music. This matters to you more than the rest. The man is a genuine musician, plays the lute, the organ, the virginals, composes, sings in his own consort, and not the way kings usually do things where everyone applauds the crown. Actually well. A king who knows what breath control costs. A king who knows when he hears a clean triple-tongued cascade from a moving horse exactly how difficult it is. That is the man you have to reach. That is also a man who, everyone at this court already understands without a single treasonous word being spoken aloud, has never in his life been refused anything, whose sunshine is glorious, and whose shadow arrives without warning. The old king's 2 most hated ministers went to the block in the first months of this reign, thrown to the crowd like bones to dogs, and the crowd cheered, and the young king smiled, and it was spring. Everyone loves him. Everyone is afraid of him. At this court, those are not opposites. They are the recipe. The king walks the tilt from end to end, testing the barrier with his own hand, shaking the timber to feel its firmness, laughing at something, mounting the steps of the Queen's half-built gallery 2 at a time to see the view she'll have. And on his way back across the sand, his course bends, unmistakably, deliberately bends, toward the line of trumpeters. Your heart climbs into your throat and stands there. He walks along the line of horses like a captain reviewing a guard, saying something to the marshal that makes the marshal glow like a boy, and then he stops, in front of you. Up close, the king has the disconcerting habit, everyone remarks on it, of standing slightly too near and giving you the entirety of his attention, as if you were the only man in England. His eyes are small and very blue, and they go over your face, your trumpet, your horse, with frank, cheerful, unembarrassed curiosity, the way he looks at everything, because the whole world is his and he is still young enough to be delighted by his own possessions. The black trumpet, he says, not a question. An identification, like naming a favourite horse. Then, they tell me you're to ride at the head of the noise in the new hat. Your mouth is dry as ash. Years of training answer for you, bowing from the saddle at exactly the right depth. If it please your grace, it does please my grace. He glances at your trumpet, and you will replay this moment for the rest of your life, reaches out one huge ringed hand and taps the bell of it with a fingernail, tink, a tiny bright sound, and says, "Play the salute again, just you, just you." The line of trumpeters on either side of you turns to stone. Somewhere behind the king, 30 courtiers arrange their faces. The marshal, God bless him forever, gives you the smallest nod in the history of necks. You have maybe 2 heartbeats, and in those 2 heartbeats your entire body runs its checks the way it has 10,000 times. Seat deep, back tall, horse standing square and half asleep, lips. Your lips are bruised from 2 days of playing and cold, and you know precisely where the tender spots are and precisely how to angle the mouthpiece a hair's breadth off them. You take the breath low all the way to your belt, ribs opening, the freezing air scraping down your throat, and you play the royal salute for the King of England, alone, in a frozen tilt-yard on a grey horse, and you make it. This is the only way to say it. You make it true. Every note struck dead centre. The high note not merely reached but sat upon, ringing, easy, like a man leaning on a gate. The final cascade rolled out crisp as dice on a drumhead, and the last chord placed down gently, like setting a full cup on a table without a click. The sound dies over the tilt-yard. The gulls complain somewhere above the river. Nobody moves, and the King of England laughs, a big, delighted boy's laugh, entirely without ceremony, and says to the men behind him, "There, my lords, there's not a prince in Europe with a better sound than that," and to you, with a nod that is almost man to man, "Keep those lips whole till Thursday, trumpeter. That's a royal command." And he is gone, striding off toward the armoury sheds, comet tail streaming after him, and the hammering resumes, and the yard breathes, and you sit on your grey horse with your pulse roaring like the sea, and against your ribs, inside your doublet, the folded paper lies very still, very light, and suddenly very, very possible. Adam eases his horse up beside yours. He looks straight ahead, at nothing, and speaks barely moving his ruined lips. "Thursday," he says, "after he rides, if he rides well. And if he rides badly, then you keep that paper next to your heart until summer," Adam says, "and thank God you still have both." The last day before the tournament passes the way, water passes through a mill, fast, loud, and turning every wheel in the building at once. The palace is bursting. Every lodging is full. Every stable is full. Every passage has become a slow river of strangers' servants in strangers' liveries, and the kitchens have gone to a war footing. You smell it everywhere. The great kitchen's chimneys are running day and night, and the air in the courtyards carries roasting meat, baking pastry, boiled spices, cinnamon, cloves, pepper in quantities that represent, you know from the gossip of clerks, small fortunes sailing out of the storerooms. The cooks are building things in there, not cooking, building sugar sculptures, castles of pastry, a confection, one of the scullions swears on his mother, in the shape of the new prince's cradle, gilded with real gold you could eat. A palace celebrating as a palace working itself half to death, and everyone below stairs knows which half. For the trumpeters, the day is a chain of small duties and one great terror. The final full rehearsal of the opening ceremonies, with heralds, with officers of arms, with everyone. And it is here, standing in the freezing tilt-yard between run-throughs, holding your horse and flexing the stiffness out of your split-knuckled hands, that you finally learn, from the heralds who know everything first, what Thursday will actually look like, and how strange, how gorgeously, deliriously strange this king's imagination runs. The tournament will open as a story, not a contest, a story, a pageant, a piece of theatre with the whole court inside it. The challengers, the king and his 3 companions, will not enter as themselves. They will enter in disguise, in invented names, as knights out of a romance. 4 strangers from a far-off land come to honour the Queen. There is a pageant car, you've seen it under canvas in the sheds, a thing the size of a small house on wheels, built as a forest, an actual artificial forest, green silk and gold with rocks and trees and a castle in the middle of it, drawn into the yard by fabulous beasts, and the 4 knights will ride out of it, out of the pretend forest, armoured head to heel and take the field, and the king will joust under a made-up name, a nom de guerre stitched onto everything, and the name he has chosen, the heralds say, grinning, is Cur Loyal, Loyal Heart. Sir Loyal Heart jousting for the love of his wife before all of England. And every soul in the stands will know exactly which enormous auburn knight in gold-decorated armour is Sir Loyal Heart. That is not the point. The point is the game. The court is a theatre that never admits it's a theatre. A tournament is the one week the costumes come out openly, and somehow, by the alchemy of ceremony, the pretending makes it more true, not less. A 21-year-old king with a newborn son, riding in play disguise for his queen. The heralds have seen every spectacle in Europe, and even they're talking about Thursday like boys, and your trumpets open it, all of it. The story does not begin until you say so, in brass. The rehearsal grinds through the afternoon. Positions, processions, salutes, the heralds in their stiff tabards pacing distances, officers with wands of office shouting about precedence, always precedence. The pageant car hauled out under its canvas and hauled back twice because the wheels bite into the frozen sand. You play the opening fanfares so many times the notes lose their names. The cold works into you layer by layer, and the day's small pains file themselves in the ledger. Lips past bruised now, into that hot, glassy tenderness that every trumpeter knows and fears. The state where the good sound still comes, but you can feel exactly how much is left in the purse. Keep those lips whole till Thursday, a royal command. You catch yourself, absurdly, playing the last run-throughs a shade under full force, hoarding yourself like a miser, and the marshal catches it too. Of course he does. And rides past you and says without stopping, yes, save it. Tomorrow you spend everything, which is the closest thing to tenderness the man has said in living memory. That night, the palace does not really sleep, and neither do you. You lie on your pallet in the dark, listening. The sounds are different tonight, layered like the smells. Peter's snore, distant hammering, still from the tilt yard. Torchlit carpenters racing the dawn. A cart rumbling somewhere. Laughter from a window across the court. High-born laughter going late. The river below everything, patient cold, hauling itself to the sea, as it did under the Romans and will under kings whose names no one here will ever know. Your body aches in every trumpeter's place. The petition lies against your ribs. You have stopped debating it. The debate is over. What's left is the waiting, and waiting, you have found, is heavier. So you do what you've always done on the nights before the great days, the trick that carried you across oceans and up the long rope of your trade. You rehearse, not the fanfares. Those are in your hands now, deeper than thought. You rehearse the moment. Adam's counsel, Thursday, after he rides, if he rides well. You walk it through in the dark, step by step, like a man walking an unfamiliar staircase by candlelight. The tournament ends, the king unhelmed, flushed, triumphant, the crowd still roaring, the procession back, the moment. There is always a moment, some gap in the ceremony where the machine exhales, and the right officer of the household, the one whose hands papers pass through, standing near. Your bow, your words, few, plain, rehearsed until they cannot shake. If it please your grace's poor servant has a humble petition. Kneel, offer the paper up with both hands, and then the moment that cannot be rehearsed, because it belongs entirely to another man, the king's face, deciding. Somewhere in the middle of the fourth or fifth rehearsal of the unrehearsable, sleep takes you the way the tide takes a boat off a sandbar. You don't feel it lift, only that at some point you're moving, and the room is gone, and you dream, not of kings, but of heat, real heat, and a bright shore you can never quite turn your head far enough to see. The bells wake you in the black of Thursday morning, and the day arrives in your chest before your eyes are even open. Today. Every nerve in your body reports for duty at once. The lodging is chaos by rushlight. 5 men dressing at arm's length from one another, and this morning the new livery. It came up from the wardrobe at dawn in the arms of 2 boys wrapped like treasure, and you dress with a care you've never given clothing in your life. The new coat is finer than anything you've worn. The cloth dense and soft under your fingers, the king's colours deep and true, every seam lying flat, and then the chapeau. You wind and settle it with both hands before the sliver of polished steel that serves the room as a mirror, purple and gold in the little light, and the man looking back at you from the metal is a stranger, and is also, you think, with a sudden tightness in your throat, the truest picture of yourself you've ever been shown. John Blanke, trumpeter to the King of England, dressed to be seen at 100 paces. Peter looks at you and gives a low whistle. Well, he says, if we're cattle falling down a staircase today, at least they'll be looking at you. They'll hear you first, you say, and the room laughs, and the laugh is good, It loosens all of you, and you go down together into the dark with your trumpets in your hands like soldiers going to a battle where the enemy is silence. The yard, the mews, the horses steaming under torchlight. Grey takes the bit with the resigned dignity of a philosopher. You check his legs, his girth again. Around you, the palace is transforming in the last dark hour the way a stage transforms behind a curtain. Banners going up the poles, stiff with frost, snapping as they open. The stands receiving their last hangings. Braziers being lit along the galleries. Coals ticking and settling. Somewhere the pageant car groaning out of its shed on newly greased axles. Its silk forest rustling in the wind like a real one. And then the sky over the abbey goes from black to iron to the colour of old pearl, and the gates open and London comes in. You had forgotten, you always forget, that this is not only for the court. A tournament is a public spectacle, and the public arrives like a river given permission. Citizens and apprentices, wives and children, sailors, students, pickpockets certainly, everyone in their best, everyone shoving, everyone eating something, the vendors materializing out of nowhere as vendors do, hot pies and roast chestnuts and ale, the smells rolling across the frozen yard, and the noise building and building, thousands of voices, and under them the drums of the city waits, and over them the gulls screaming at all of it. By full light, the stands are a single packed mass of colour and breath fog, thousands of faces stacked to the sky. The Queen's gallery glows with tapestry and fur, and there she is, Catherine herself, the Spanish Queen, small and grave and shining, 25 years old, a mother 2 weeks over childbirth, taking her seat under a canopy of gold to watch her enormous husband risk his neck in her honour. The crowd roars for her. She lifts one small hand. The marshal rides down the line of trumpeters, checking each man with one long look. He stops at you last. Whatever he sees he keeps. All he says is, "Front rank, take us in." You gather grey. The trumpet comes up. Beyond the gate, the tilt yard waits, white sand raked smooth as paper. 10,000 people holding one breath, a kingdom leaning forward. The hand drops, and you spend everything. The sound you make riding through that gate is the best sound you've ever made in your life, and you know it while it is happening, which almost never happens, and it is like being slightly outside your own body, watching a man in purple and gold on a grey horse split the morning open with brass. The fanfare goes up and the crowd's roar comes back down, and the two sounds collide somewhere over the tilt and become a single physical thing, a pressure you can feel on your face like wind. Grey's ears flick once and settle. Good, deaf, philosophical Grey. And he carries you down the length of the yard at a ceremonial walk as though he did this every morning before breakfast. And behind you the mounted company wheels into position, and behind them the heralds, and the officers of arms, and the whole glittering apparatus of the day unfolds into the arena like a banner unrolling. You see it in flashes because your work owns most of your eyes. The stands tiered and howling, children on shoulders, a man selling chestnuts having the single best morning of his commercial life, the Queen's gallery like a jewel box with the lid up, frost smoking off the sand where the sun has found it, your own breath and the horse's breath and the breath of 10,000 people rising together into the blue-white sky, as if the whole yard were one animal, gently steaming. You take your position. The fanfares call the yard to order, and the yard obeys. That will never stop being strange, the way your lungs can instruct 10,000 people. And the day begins, and what a day. The heralds cry the challenge in French and English, titles rolling off their tongues like drums. And then the pageant enters, and even you who watched it built feel the crowd's gasp go through your own chest. The forest comes in, a forest moving, a great wheeled island of green silk and gold, trees and rocks and flowers, a castle of gold in its midst, drawn. The crowd loses its mind entirely at this, by two great beasts, a golden lion and a silver antelope, each led by wild men, woodwoses, men dressed as legends. The whole invention rolls the length of the tilt yard and halts before the queen, and out of the artificial forest, visors down, ride 4 armoured knights. The heralds cry their invented names, the names of the story, and last, alone, on a horse trapped in gold, rides the 4th knight, and stitched on his trappings, gold on gold, a device and a name, Cur Loyal, Sir Loyal Heart, 6 feet 2 of him. The crowd knows. The crowd absolutely knows, and the roar that goes up is the roar of 10,000 people delightedly agreeing to pretend, and above it your trumpets scream the challengers onto the field, and Sir Loyal Heart makes his horse, makes it, at will, in front of everyone, leap and curvet and dance the length of the Queen's gallery, armour flashing, and Catherine of Aragon, Queen of England, mother of the Prince, presses her hands together like a girl. Then the answerers enter at the far gate, the men who will ride against the challengers, lords and knights in their own steel and finery, and the marshals of the field take their places, and the sand is cleared and raked once more, and the first 2 riders take their ends of the tilt, and the yard goes down into that particular silence that exists nowhere else on earth. 10,000 people being quiet together, which is not quiet at all, but a vast rustling held breath. And you learn over the next hours what a joust actually is, from closer than you've ever stood. It is faster than seems possible. That is the first thing. From the stands it reads as pageantry. From the rail, where the trumpeters hold their station, it is violence on a timer. The riders sit their horses at either end, 60, 70 yards apart, lances upright, and the horses know. They dance and lean against the bit like held water, and the marshal's arm falls, and the world goes from stillness to 30 miles an hour in the space of a Hail Mary. The hoofbeats are not separate sounds. They are a roll, a drum roll from 2 directions at once, converging. The lances come down in the last third, wavering, seeking, and then the noise. You never get used to the noise. Lance on shield is a crack like a tree snapping. Lance on steel plate is worse. A flat, terrible clang and shatter, and the splinters fly, actual jagged spinning pieces of wood the length of your arm, turning in the sunlight, raining down on the sand, and the crowd screams with each one because splinters are the score. Splinters are the sport. A lance well broken is the whole art. The riders rock. You watch a man take a strike square on the breastplate and bend backward over his horse's rump like a bow, and somehow by pure trained animal instinct, haul himself upright again with the lance stump still in his fist, and thunder past each other and pull up and turn, and the marshals cry the score, and the heralds note it on their rolls, and your trumpets salute the course, and it begins again. Between courses the yard breathes. Squires run out with fresh lances, painted, banded, made. You know now, with deliberate weaknesses built to break because the sport is breaking. Grooms lead out fresh horses, big-boned Italian and Spanish stock trapped in velvet to the ground. A man rakes the churned sand smooth. The vendors' cries float in from the outer crowd. Hot pies, hot. And somewhere a dog has gotten loose and is having the greatest day of any living creature in Westminster. And you play. All day you play. Every entry, every course, every score, every pause. By mid-morning your lips have crossed from tenderness into the strange, floating, dangerous country beyond it, where a trumpeter stops trusting feel. The feel is gone, burned flat, and plays instead by pure architecture. Breath, posture, angle, faith. There's blood in the mouthpiece by noon, not much. You swallow the taste of copper between fanfares and keep your embouchure a hair off the split and the sound. By God's small joke and 20 years of rope climbing holds. Peter's tone is fraying at the edges. Adam's whistle-lunged endurance is a miracle of economy. The old man spending nothing, wasting nothing. Every note the minimum that will pass and passing. The marshal's eyes move down the line all day like a physician's. And then, in the early afternoon, with the low winter sun laying every rider's shadow 40 feet across the sand, the moment the whole day has been circling arrives. Sir Loyal Heart takes the tilt. The yard's roar climbs to a pitch you have not heard before and stops, all of it at once, cut off as the king settles into the saddle at the far end, and the great gold-trapped horse goes still under him, and the lance comes down off his thigh and up into the rest, and the whole kingdom, for one endless second, contemplates the single most alarming fact of its existence. Everything, succession, peace, the cradle at Richmond, every fortune and future in these stands, everything is about to run down a strip of sand at another armed man. You're close enough to see his horse's nostrils flare. You think, a thought that arrives from nowhere, absurd and precise, of the folded paper against your ribs, if the angle goes wrong, if the splinter finds the slit, if the ground betrays the horse, then there is no petition, no wage, no anything. The world that contains your entire question ceases to exist between one hoofbeat and the next. The marshal's arm falls, and the King of England rides. You have watched horsemen your whole life, on 3 coasts and in 2 royal courts, and you will tell it plainly, the way Adam tells things. The man can ride. He comes down the tilt not like a knight, but like weather, like something loosed rather than ridden, huge and utterly balanced, the lance dropping into line as smoothly as a note finding pitch, and he takes his opponent's point full on the shield without a flicker, and puts his own lance square on the other man's breastplate, and it explodes. The whole lance to the fist, a crack like the roof of the sky splitting, splinters sailing higher than the stands. And the answerer rocks, keeps his saddle, just, and the 2 horses thunder past each other through a storm of falling wood. And the sound that comes out of 10,000 people is not cheering. It is closer to relief, weaponized. It is the sound a kingdom makes when its whole future gallops down a strip of sand and comes out the other end upright. The king pulls up in front of the Queen's gallery and hauls off his helm with both hands, and his hair is dark with sweat, and his face is scarlet, and he is laughing up at his wife like an apprentice who has just won a bet, and Catherine is on her feet, and the gallery is on its feet, and the stands are one solid wall of noise, and the marshal is signalling furiously. And you raise the trumpet to your ruined lips and give the King of England the loudest, cleanest, most golden salute of your entire life, and you cannot hear yourself at all. The crowd has swallowed the trumpet whole. It doesn't matter, some music is for the eye. He runs course after course through the afternoon, Sir Loyal Heart, and breaks more lances than any man on the field, and whether every opponent rode against him with their whole hearts is a question you are far too old in courts to ask even inside your own skull. It doesn't matter. He rode well, and he knows he rode well, and both of those things are true at once. And by the last course of the day, the January light is going blue and gold at the edges of the sky, and torches are being lit along the galleries, and the King of England is the happiest man in the northern half of the world. Adam eases up beside you as the heralds cry the day's scores. He does not look at you. Over the crowd, barely moving his lips, he says one word: tonight. The banquet that night is the kind of thing men describe to their grandchildren badly, because there are no household words for it. The hall is transformed. Hundreds of candles, thousands maybe, banked in branches down the tables and blazing in the great candle beams overhead. So much flame that the air itself is warm and golden and moving, shadows swimming up the tapestries. The tables run the length of the hall in strict geography of rank. White cloth, plate, gold plate at the high end, actual gold, dishes and cups and salts, a cupboard of it 7 shelves high standing against the wall, doing nothing but existing expensively, which is its entire job. This is how a king says wealth without speaking. The smell is a wall you walk into. Roasted meats in their dozens, swan and peacock brought in dressed in their own feathers, spiced wine breathing cinnamon and clove into the candle heat, sugar and almonds and rosewater from the banqueting stuff, and under it all the churchy sweetness of the herbs strewn fresh for tonight underfoot. And the noise, 600 people victorious. The court is drunk before it is drunk, on the day, on the prince, on the king's broken lances, and then it is also drunk, and the roar of talk and laughter rises against the music, and the music rises against the roar in a friendly war that lasts for hours. You are working. Trumpeters at a feast announce the king's entry, the queen's, the great ceremonial dishes borne in procession shoulder high. You play the peacock into the hall, which is the kind of sentence your life produces now. And between fanfares you stand at your station by the screens with the trumpet in the crook of your arm, and you watch, because watching is the other half of your trade. You watch the king. Everyone watches the king. That is what a court is. 600 pairs of eyes arranged around one man like iron filings round a magnet. He is in cloth of gold, enormous, incandescent, eating like a harvest, laughing at everything, calling down the table, throwing comfits. He has his musicians play his own songs and sings with them, and his voice is true, and the court applauds, and for once the applause is not even a lie. He dances. After the boards are cleared, he dances with the queen, and then with half her ladies, huge and precise, leaping in the high dances like a man half his size, sweat shining, candle fire in his hair. And you stand in the shadows by the screens with your bruised mouth and your folded paper, and you wait for the moment, and the moment refuses to come. Because this is what no one tells you about the great decisions of a life. The enemy is not fear. You settled with fear days ago. The enemy is the gap, the simple, mechanical, maddening absence of a gap. The evening's a wall of ceremony without a crack in it. The king is never alone. The king is never even adjacent. The space around him is filled and refilled continuously. Lords, ambassadors, the queen, the cupbearers, the carvers, a whole choreography of access in which every single participant has more right to stand there than you. Twice you see men approach with papers, petitions at a feast. It is done. It is even traditional when the wine has made the crown generous, and both times the papers are intercepted by the smooth machinery of the household, received by an officer with a bow and a promise, filed into a sleeve, gone. Into the sleeve is not what you have bled for. Any morning of any dull week could put your paper into a sleeve. Adam said tonight. Adam is old and Adam is wise, but Adam is at the far station by the buttery door, and Adam cannot conjure a gap in the wall of England. The night burns down, the candles gutter and are changed. The sugar cradle is carried into gasps, and the prince's health is drunk standing by 600 people in a single shout that shakes the candle flames, and you drink it too, ale in a wooden cup at your station, to a 2-week-old boy asleep 8 miles upriver, who owns all of this without knowing he owns anything. And then somewhere past midnight the Queen retires, and the feast begins its long, loud, golden collapse, and you understand, with a heaviness that settles into your tired legs like river water, that the moment is not coming, not tonight, and then it comes. It comes the way the moments always come, from the flank, unannounced, wearing the wrong clothes. The king, flushed with dancing, breaks from the high table's orbit, not toward the door, toward the musicians, because of course toward the musicians he is Henry. The knight's true love of his life after his wife and his horse is the noise itself. And he is among the minstrels with a cup in his hand trying a man's lute, laughing, and the orbit of courtiers reshuffles around him in a fluster, and his course, his loose, cheerful, unpredictable course down the hall, is carrying him toward the screens, toward your station, 30 feet, 20. He stops to say something to the marshal of the trumpeters that makes the marshal bow to the floor. 10 feet. You can smell the rosewater and the wine and the sweat of the dancing. Your heart is not beating fast. That is the strange thing you will remember. It has gone slow and enormous, like the Abbey bell. He sees you. The purple and gold chapeau does its work. That reads at 100 paces, the tailor said, and it reads at 10 feet too. And his face opens with the easy pleasure of a man recognizing a possession that performed well. The black trumpet, the king says, still on your feet, your lips held then. I commanded it. You'll recall. The court around him produces the small, dutiful laugh. And there it is. The gap. 1 heartbeat wide, closing already. The officers already leaning in with the next thing. The night already moving. You go down on 1 knee on the strewn herbs, and the words come out plain and few, exactly as rehearsed in the dark, exactly as rehearsed across oceans, your voice steady because it is a trained instrument, the second one you own. They held for your grace, and your grace's poor servant has a petition, if it please your grace to receive it. And you hold up the paper with both hands, the folds worn soft, your split knuckles perfectly still, your face down, and the hall's noise goes on around you exactly as before because almost no one has even seen, and the silence directly above you lasts 1 year, 2 years, 10. Thick fingers, heavy with rings, take the paper out of your hands. A trumpeter who petitions on a feast night, the king's voice says above you, and you cannot read it, mirth or displeasure, the 2 dialects of majesty that sound so terribly alike, has either great folly or great timing. A pause, the creak of paper unfolding. Then, to someone else, in the voice kings use for making small things official. Master Secretary, mark this for me. We'll see it answered. And the enormous presence moves on down the hall, taking its weather with it, and a hand, the marshal's, grips your shoulder and hauls you up, and the marshal's face is doing something complicated between fury and pride, and all he says is, "Play the king out when he goes, and then, Blanke, in God's name, go to bed." You play the King of England out of his victory feast sometime toward morning, the last fanfare of the longest day of your life, your lips finally, honestly finished, the final chord placed down gently, like setting a full cup on a table. The paper is gone from your doublet. Your ribs feel strange without it, lighter and unguarded both at once. Now comes the part no one rehearses, the waiting. The second day of the tournament teaches you something about this kingdom that no ceremony ever could, and it teaches it in about 4 minutes of beautiful chaos. You're back at your station by mid-morning, running on 4 hours of sleep and a mouth that feels like borrowed property, and the second day is grander than the first, because the king, having ridden brilliantly once, intends to do it again with interest. More courses, more broken lances, Sir Loyal-Heart in fresh gold, his horses' trappings sewn, actually sewn, you can see them flashing, with letters of gold, little golden H's and K's, Henry and Catherine, stitched all over the king's clothes and the trappings like coins on a bride. And at the end of the day comes the part the king has planned as pure joy, and which becomes, instead, legend. After the jousting, the celebration spills toward the hall, and the king, glowing, magnanimous, wine-warm, does a thing kings of England do on their happiest days. He lets the crowd close. The commons, the ordinary Londoners packed at the edges of everything, are permitted near, to cheer, to touch, to share the glory. And by ancient rowdy custom, the gold letters on the royal garments are largesse, souvenirs. The people may pluck them, the people pluck them. It begins as festivity and becomes, in the space of 10 heartbeats, a cheerful riot. The crowd surges. You're close enough to be shoved off your feet, and you keep your trumpet up over your head like a man fording a river. And hands, hundreds of hands, strip the gold letters from the king's coat, from the trappings, from the coats of his companions, faster than shearing, laughing, roaring, and the thing accelerates the way crowds accelerate, and they take the letters, and then the ornaments, and then the cloth itself. They strip one gentleman very nearly to his doublet. They are peeling England's finest like an orange, and for one long, freezing second, you watch the guards' hands go to their weapons, and the whole golden day balances on the edge of an entirely different kind of history. And the king laughs, head back, huge, unfeigned. He stands there in his ruined, plucked, half-stripped magnificence, gold letters vanishing into 1,000 London pockets, and he declares it all largesse, all of it, gifts, honour, love. And the crowd howls his name, and the guards' hands come off their hilts, and the court exhales and laughs because the king laughs, and the whole beast lumbers on toward the feast, and you stand in the churned sand with your heart restarting, understanding, in your bones now rather than your head, the lesson of the second day. Everything here, everything, runs on the mood of one man, the same crowd, the same plucking hands, the same 4 minutes. With a laugh, it is a love feast between a king and his people, a story to be told for 400 years. Without the laugh, it is treason and blood on the sand. The line between those two Englands is the width of one young man's temper on one winter evening. And somewhere in that same man's keeping, filed by a secretary marked to be answered, is a piece of paper with your name on it. You sleep that night like a man dropped from a height, and then the tournament is over, The pageant forest is broken up for its timber and silk. The stands come down plank by plank. The strangers' liveries drain out of the palace. The kitchens stand down from their war, and the court returns to what the court calls ordinary. And you learn the true weight of the word waiting. Days. The petition has gone into the machine, and the machine does not report its digestion. You play the mornings and the meals and the chapel days. You count nothing out loud. You ask no one. Asking is fatal. Asking makes a man look anxious, and anxious at court is one street away from doubtful, and doubtful is one street away from finished. You do your work. You watch the officers of the household the way sailors watch the sky. Adam catches your eye across the yard on the third day and gives you nothing but a shrug the size of a sparrow. Patience. Peter, who knows only that you've been strange all month, diagnoses a woman and offers frankly terrible advice. The marshal works you all like. January will be inspected by God. And your mind in the empty hours does what minds do. It builds both futures in full detail and makes you live in each. In one, a clerk reads out 16 pence by the day, and the world is not changed and is completely changed. In the other, there is no answer at all, ever, which is how courts most often say no, not with a word, but of the silence that simply never ends. And you grow old at 8 pence, the marvel in the fine hat, seen by everyone and valued by the ledger at exactly half. On a grey afternoon, a week and more after the tournament, a boy in the secretary's livery finds you in the passage by the trumpeter's lodging and says 4 words that stop your blood. Blanke, you're sent for. The office he brings you to is small and warm and smells of ink, sealing wax and wood smoke. The smell, you will think ever afterward, of fate in this kingdom, which does not arrive on horseback but sits at a desk. The clerk behind the desk has your petition in front of him. You recognise it across the room the way you would recognise your own hand at a distance. Your folds, worn, soft. It has been endorsed. There is new ink on it. There is... Your eyes fasten on it and cannot leave. A signature at the head, and even upside down, even from the doorway you know the letters. Everyone in this palace knows the letters. Henry, in the king's own hand. John Blanke, trumpeter, the clerk says, in the voice of a man reading the weather to a field, entirely unaware that the field is on fire. The king's grace has granted your petition, wages of 16 pence by the day, to you from this present month. It will be entered so. You may go. And that is all. That is the entire ceremony. No trumpet sounds for the trumpeter. The clerk is already reaching for the next paper. The fire ticks in the grate. Somewhere outside, a cart goes over cobbles, and a gull yells at Westminster, and the ordinary afternoon continues to be an ordinary afternoon in every particle of the world except one. You walk out of that office into the cold, and you get perhaps 20 steps down the passage, out into the corner of the yard, before your legs inform you that they require a wall, and you put your back against the freezing stone and you breathe, and the breath comes out of you in pieces, fog on the air, and you take an inventory because you're a man who counts. You are laughing, very quietly, and your eyes are burning, and your hands, your cracked, split-knuckled, trained, travelled hands, are perfectly steady. 16 pence by the day, the same as the others. The King of England looked at a piece of paper with your name on it, weighed you, and wrote his own name above yours. Understand what was actually decided, because it was never really the pence. Somewhere in this palace, a ledger now says, in ink, forever, that John Blanke, who came from heat and salt water and other men's decisions, across 3 coasts and 2 courts, up the long rope of one skill to the cold edge of the world, is worth what any man of his trade is worth. You asked the question that cannot be unasked, and the answer, sealed at the highest desk in the kingdom, was yes. They will find that paper, you know, some day. Clerks keep everything. That is their religion. Some other man in some unimaginable year will lift your petition out of a bundle and read your name and the king's name above it and wonder about you, who you were, how you dared. Let him wonder. The paper will tell him the only thing that needs telling, he asked. He signed his name to the asking. Adam finds you in the yard, of course he does, and reads your face in one glance, and his ruined mouth does something it almost never does, which is smile all the way. Well, he says, you blew it once. I blew it once, you say. Then buy the old man a drink, 16 pence, Adam says, and let a poor 8-penny trumpeter warm himself at your fire. And he laughs until his lungs whistle like kettles, and you walk to the buttery together through the falling dark, two of the king's noises, off duty. After that the seasons take the year, the way they always do, and you move through them differently, because a man who has been answered walks differently, even when nothing else has changed. The frost breaks in March. The palace mud goes from iron to soup, and you learn all over again to walk the edges of the yards where the ground is firmer, and the river loses its grey armour and turns brown and businesslike, crowded with barges as the sailing season opens. You play the spring ceremonies, Easter, when the whole court moves through its devotions like a golden machine, the chapel blazing, Master Cornish's choir making sounds that raise the hair on your arms even after all these years, music being the one country where you and the king and the scullion boy are all briefly the same size. Summer comes, and the court does what the court does in summer. It moves. The whole vast animal packs itself onto carts and barges, beds, tapestries, kitchens, plate, papers, hounds, hawks, trumpeters, and progresses from palace to palace up and down the river valley, letting each set of rooms air out and each countryside feed it. And you see England from horseback in the green months, hedgerows boiling with birds, haymakers standing up in the fields to watch the king's music ride by. In the evenings, in strange courtyards, you play the king his suppers, and sometimes, when the mood is on him, he comes and stands by the musicians with a cup and talks, actually talks, about tonguing and breath and the trumpets he heard from the emperor's men once, and argues cheerfully with the marshal about mouthpieces, and you are never, ever off your guard in his presence, because you have seen the other weather, but you would be lying if you said the sunshine wasn't sunshine. The grief comes in the same year, because this is still the world, and the world in these years gives nothing away for free. The little prince, the boy the whole golden tournament was for, the boy whose health 600 people drank standing while the candle flames shook, lives 52 days. The news comes upriver at the end of February and moves through the palace, the way cold moves through a house when a door blows open. The bells that rang his birth ring his passing. You play for the funeral rites, the black cloth out again so soon after the gold, and you watch the king, 21 years old, learn in public the one lesson no tournament prepares a man for, and you watch the queen, who has now buried 2 children in 3 years, walk behind a coffin the size of a vial case. No one at court says the obvious thing, which is that everything, the successions, the future, all of it, is once again a question. You are learning that this is what a court truly is, under the gold plate and the trumpets, a great engine for pretending the future is certain, stuffed entirely by people who know it is not. You grieve honestly, in your own small way, for a child you never saw, because you played him into the world's rejoicing, and some part of every trumpeter belongs to the things he has announced. And life, having no alternative, continues. The wages paid, 16 pence, month after month, real as bread. You begin, for the first time since you crossed the last of your seas, to save, and to think the thoughts a man thinks when there is finally something in the box under the loose board. Forward thoughts, roots, because there is one more thing, and it is the best thing, and I have kept it for the end of the year the way you kept it, close and quiet and warming. Her name does not survive in any ledger, so the ledgers can do without it. You know it, and that is enough. She is a Londoner. You met the way people below stairs meet, through the endless traffic of service, an errand, a doorway, a second look. She was not amazed by you, that was the first thing. 11 years in England, and she was the first soul who looked at your face and simply found a man there, and asked, in the plain way of London women, whether trumpeting paid, and you said, as it happened, it had recently improved. You caught her through the autumn in the small hours a servant owns, Sunday afternoons, feast day evenings, walks by the river when the tide is low and the gulls are quarrelling over the mud. You tell her true things, slowly, one at a time, like a man taking coins from a hidden purse, the heat, the ships, the rope of the trade. And she takes each one without flinching, and gives you London back in exchange, her whole map of it, which parishes bake the honest bread, and which watermen will drown you for a farthing. Her hands are rough like yours. When she laughs, she puts her whole head back like the king does, and you decide not to tell her that, and then you tell her, and she laughs harder. You marry in the winter, in a small church, in the 12th year of the century, with Peter and old Adam standing witness in their best coats, Adam weeping frankly and blaming the cold. And here is the last wonder of this story, and it is written in the ledgers so you may believe it as history and not as a bedtime kindness. When word of the wedding travels upward, because everything at court travels upward, there comes down from the great wardrobe by the king's own command a wedding gift to John Blanke, trumpeter, upon his marriage, a gown of violet cloth, a bonnet, a hat. The King of England, who has half of Christendom to think about, sent his black trumpeter wedding clothes. You hold the violet cloth in your two hands in the wardrobe's doorway, dense, fine, the colour deep as dusk. And the tailor who once measured you for the chapeau looks over his spectacles and says, "Well, trumpeter, it seems you read at 100 paces after all," and goes back to his stitching before you can find your voice, which is just as well, because your voice is not at that moment findable. You wear the violet gown at your wedding. You are by every measure your life owns a made man, a wage equal to any man of your trade, a wife who laughs with her whole head back, a king's cloth on your shoulders, and your name, your actual name, John Blanke, chosen or given or grown, yours, written into the books of the royal household of England, where clerks keep everything forever. Somewhere in these same years, a painter's commissioned to make a great long picture of the tournament. A roll, yards and yards of it, every rider, every herald, the pageant, the king mid-course, with his lance shattering. The whole golden January day pressed flat and made permanent. And in that painting, twice, at the head of the mounted trumpeters, there is a man with brown skin and a turban of gold, horsed, trumpet raised, banner falling from the brass. It is the only face like it in the whole long roll. It will be, as far as anyone can ever discover, the earliest true portrait of a black man in all of England's records. Not a symbol, not a saint from a story, but a workman of the household, painted because he was there, doing his work at the head of the noise. That is you. That is your face, riding down 400 years, 500 more, into times you could not begin to imagine. Times when the palace is gone, and the tilts are forgotten, and the whole language of trumpets and precedents has faded like the ink around your name. People in those times will lean over the painted roll in quiet rooms and find you there in your gold hat among the pale faces, and they will ask the same question you asked yourself in the dark at 8 pence a day. Who was he? What was he worth? And the paper will answer. He asked the king, and the king said, the same as any man. But before we lie down for the last time tonight, walk with him once more through one ordinary working day of that new life, because the truth of any life is not in its great scenes. It is in the 10th ordinary Tuesday after them. It is a market morning in late winter, and you're off duty until the afternoon, and your wife has decided that a man with 16 pence a day can carry a basket, and so you're in the streets of London proper, doing the most unheroic thing a king's trumpeter can do, shopping. And London in the morning is its own kind of court, with its own precedents and its own fanfares. The streets are a solid, slow river of people and animals and handcarts, and there are no trumpets here, only voices, hundreds of them, each one selling hot sheep's feet, fresh herring, ribbons, eels, kindling, milk still warm from beasts stabled 3 streets away. The ground is a negotiator's territory of frozen mud and dung and ash and cabbage leaves, and you walk it the way everyone walks it, eyes down for the footing and up for the traffic in alternating heartbeats, and your wife walks it better than you, because she has been reading this river since she could walk at all. You buy fish, arguing pleasantly. The fishwife calls your wife darling and you sir, and looks at your face a moment longer than she looks at other faces, and then looks longer still at the king's badge on your coat, and the badge wins, the way it always wins, and the fish gets 2 extra herring on top because royalty, even at this enormous distance, even filtered down to a servant's sleeve on a Tuesday, is glamour, and glamour is worth 2 herring in any century. At the baker's, the queue moves slowly, and the woman ahead of you turns and stares and keeps staring, and her staring is not London's usual half-second of curiosity. It goes on too long, and it has that particular quality you know like a taste, the look that is deciding what you are instead of asking who. 11 years ago this look could rue in a morning. You had no floor under you then. Every stare was a question about whether you would be allowed to exist here, and you had no answer to show anyone but your own 2 hands. Now you look back at her, calm, direct, the way a man looks who knows what is written next to his name in the books of the king's household, and you say, God give you good morrow, mistress, in your best English, which is by now simply English, with the river in its vowels like everyone else's here, and she blinks and reddens and mutters good morrow back and turns around, and the queue moves on, and that is the entire battle. 4 seconds, no casualties, and your wife, who missed none of it, bumps your arm with her basket in a way that means well done and also means I would have said something ruder, and both meanings are correct. This is what the paper bought, you understand. Not the pence, though the pence are good, and the herring on top are good. It bought the floor. It bought the 4-second battle instead of the 4-year ones. A man who has been valued out loud by the only voice in the kingdom that cannot be appealed walks through stairs the way a ship walks through weather. You spend the late morning at the instrument makers off Cheapside because a trumpeter with money saved is a dangerous customer, and you have been circling a decision for a month. A new mouthpiece made to your own lip, your own worn groove, your own split map of tender places, instead of the standard issue of the King's Store. The maker is a Fleming with hands like a surgeon, and no patience for anyone, and he makes you press your lips to blank after blank of cold silver, while he watches the seal with one eye shut, muttering in 3 languages and files, and makes you press again, and the shop smells of charcoal and metal and lamp oil, and fine bright shavings of brass curl off his bench like golden hair, and after an hour he holds up a mouthpiece and says, in the tone of a man announcing a verdict, "This one." The others were per some other man's mouth. You pay him what he asks, which is a great deal, and you do not haggle, which shocks him visibly, and you walk out with the small heavy silver weight of it in your fist, warming it out of pure habit, and you think, 11 years ago everything I owned went into one bundle. Today I bought a piece of silver shaped exactly like my own scars. In the afternoon you're back at the palace, on duty, and the day gives you one last small scene to keep. There is a new boy in the Trumpeters' company. There is always, eventually, a new boy. 14. Hands too big for him, up from Essex with his whole life in a sack, so green he bows to the cooks. He cracked a note yesterday in front of the marshal, and has been the colour of whey ever since. And today he is standing in the passage outside the lodging, holding his trumpet like a drowning man holds a plank, silently rehearsing fingerings for an instrument that has no fingerings, which is what terror does to the young. You stop. You are not planning to stop. "You're breathing from here," you tell him and tap his collarbone. "That's a chest full of fear, not air. Put the breath here." You press your own belt. Low, slow. The note stands on the breath like you stand on the floor. Bad floor, bad note. Good floor. You shrug. Then the worst that plays is a good note badly. A man survives those. The boy stares at you, at the coat, the chapeau you're not even wearing, but which everyone at court has heard of, at your face, and asks, in the reckless way of the very frightened, the question grown men here never quite dare. Is it true you ask the king for your wages, him yourself, to his face? And the passage is cold, and supper is soon, and somewhere the marshal is inventing tomorrow's angers, and 500 years are listening, though neither of you can hear them. "I asked," you say, "in writing with my name on it, chose my moment like a note, blew it once." "Weren't you afraid?" "All the way down to my boots," you say. Fear was never the question, boy. The question is what your work is worth. Learn the work first. Learn it until your sound is a fact, like the river is a fact. And then, one day, when the moment stands in front of you with its hand out, you pick up his trumpet from where his huge young hands are strangling it, and set it back into them properly, balanced, the way Adam once set yours. Don't let anyone else name your price. Good floor, low breath. Go eat something. And he goes, walking a half-inch taller, and you stand in the cold passage a moment longer, feeling the strangeness and the rightness of it. The rope you climbed hanging down behind you now for other hands, and then the supper horn sounds somewhere and the palace turns over into evening, and the day, the ordinary unpainted, unrecorded day, folds itself away with all the others. And now it is night again, one more night, an ordinary one deep in that same winter, and we will end where all days end. The lodging is quiet. You have your own hearth now, a small one, a married man's room in the city, a short walk from the palace when the court is at Westminster. And the fire has burned down to that final architecture of embers that holds its shape and gives its heat gently, the way old men give advice. The window is shuttered against the cold. Outside, London is settling. The last carts, the watchman's slow feet, a dog with opinions 2 streets over, and under everything, always, the river, hauling itself down to the sea in the dark, patient as the bells. Your wife is asleep beside you, warm, her breathing slow and even, the most ordinary miracle in the room. Your body reports its honest inventory, the same ledger every working body keeps. The deep ache in the small muscles around your mouth, the stiffness in your hands, the split at one knuckle that opens every January and heals every May, the good heaviness in your legs. Your trumpet stands in its cloth in the corner, cold now, waiting, patient as you were. Tomorrow there will be fanfares. Tomorrow there will be the marshal saying you're late when you are not late, and Peter's snore replaced by other men's snores in the palace lodging, when the duty roster keeps you there, and barges to be played up the frozen stairs, and precedents, endless precedents, the whole staircase of the kingdom to be read out loud in brass. Tomorrow your lips will do their work, and your legs will do theirs, and the great golden dangerous machine will turn over one more day. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is just this. The ember light on the beams, the warmth under the blanket hoarded like coin, the breathing beside you. The small, solid, astonishing fact of a life that was never supposed to exist, assembled, mile by mile and note by note, out of heat and salt water and brass and nerve, resting for a few hours, complete. You think, drifting, of all the faces of the year. The king, mid-laugh, gold letters vanishing into 1,000 hands, Adam's one sharp eye, the tailor over his spectacles, the clerk who read out your future like a weather report, the little prince who had 52 days, and for whom the greatest party of the age was thrown, and who never knew it, the queen's small lifted hand, 10,000 people breathing in one held breath as a marshal's arm came down, all of them asleep now or gone, from the palace to the poorest cellar by the river. The whole city lying down in the dark together, king and trumpeter and waterman and queen, equal for these few hours in the one democracy that has never once been overthrown. Centuries will pass. The palace you serve will burn, and its river stairs will vanish under embankments, and the tilt yard where the king broke his lances will lie somewhere beneath streets full of machines no one in your world could dream. The trumpets will fall silent, and the language of precedence will fade, and the gold plate will be melted and scattered, and even the great abbey bells will ring over a city your London could not recognise. But people will still live there, still work too hard for too little and count it in the dark, still ask, each in their own century, in their own words, the only question you ever really asked. Am I worth what the others are worth? Still gather their nerve and choose their moment and hold the paper up with both hands. Some things don't change, the human heart doesn't change, and the need for rest at the end of a long day, that doesn't change either, so let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took John Blanke by his small fire 500 years ago, with his trumpet in the corner and his wage in the ledger and his name signed under a king's. Let the world fade, let the noise quiet, let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. You've earned this rest. You have. Whatever you asked for today, whatever you're still waiting to hear, whatever moment you're still choosing, it will keep until morning. It kept for him. It will keep for you. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.